call this public meeting of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Opens Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Welcome everyone to the May meeting, and the first order of business is to administer the oath of office to place one and place two duly elected trustees, Marilyn Tolbert and Paige Ring, and call on Rob.
You'll join me down front. We'll do each one individually, and so I'll start off with place one. Okay. You'll repeat after me. I, Marilyn Tolbert.
I, Marilyn Tolbert.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The duties of the office of.
The duties of the office of.
School Board Trustee, Place 1.
School Board Trustee, Place 1.
Of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD.
Of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD.
Of the state of Texas.
Of the state of Texas.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution and laws of the United States.
The Constitution and laws of the United States.
And of this state, so help me God.
And of this state, so help me God.
Congratulations. I, Paige Ring,
I, Paige Ring.
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear.
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
That I will faithfully execute the duties of the office.
of School Board Trustee, Place 2,
School Board Trustee, Place 2.
of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD
Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD.
of the state of Texas,
State of Texas.
and will, to the best of my ability,
And will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States.
and of this state, so help me God.
And of this state, so help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Marilyn, Dr. Tolbert. Congratulations, Paige. Welcome to another 3 years.
Nice honor and privilege, thank you.
You bet. Glad to have you back. Next is the recognition of Aspiring Leader Institute and Aspiring Administrator Institute participants who've been lined up in the hall waiting patiently, and I'll call on Miss Lisa Dunn and Walter Behringer.
Thank you. Good evening, President Newcomb and Dr. Chadwell and members of the board. And this is one of my favorite times to present our aspiring leaders. We have three actually. We have a teacher leader that's wrapped into our Content Facilitator Academy, but tonight we're going to be recognizing our Aspiring Leader Institute and our Aspiring Administrator Institute. Our aspiring leaders are those that are looking to expand their leadership. I love that the EMS ISD mission is to foster a culture of excellence that leads, that instills a passion of a lifetime of continuous achievement. And I believe that our teachers and our staff that go above and beyond to take the ALI and the AAI Institute truly personify that goal. So this year we had 37 people that did the Aspiring Leader Institute. It wasn't an easy year. And I truly, truly commend the staff members who went above and beyond and met after school hours throughout the year. We had one in person, and then the rest of our sessions were via Teams, and they participated as fully and as they did all of their work. It is truly an amazing group. And so I'm looking forward to great opportunities for these people to either become administrators or perhaps curriculum or technology or be campus leaders, which is exactly what we want our teachers and staff to be. So without further ado, we're going to recognize these folks.
All right, first is Christine Ballantyne. Kayla Brown. Daniel Byron.
Hold on, if they're not gonna all stay in here, should we clap? We're gonna wait and clap at the end, but they're gonna miss it, so.
Then let's clap.
Yeah, let's
All right.
clap.
Pass that clap along to the person.
Christine.
Brent Caldwell. Robin Camp. Cecilia Castanola. Kelly Kloss. Brandy Coble. Mary Coker. Michael Elder. Danielle Finch. Vladdy Flores. Brittany Garza. Michelle Graham. Wendy Hall. Kathy Hutchins. Adrian Kendrick. Dusty Langley. Laura Lavalley. Courtney Marshall. Heather McFarland. Megan Meyer. Michelle Minshew. Kimberly Neal. Stephanie Parrott. Kimberly Preciosos. Erica Roberts. Kimberly Rollins. Tanya Romine. Christy Rush. Jennifer Stoffel. Megan Svensson. Rita Tong. Amy Watson. Dwight Williams. Brittany Williamson. And Kevin Wilson. Awesome. Okay. Mr. President, Dr. Chadwell, School Board Trustees, in alignment with our mission, as you guys have already heard Ms. Dunn represent, AAI is an opportunity for us to continue to grow administrators in our own district. and that is in alignment with Aspire 2022 Strategy 6 and also Aspire 2025 Strategy 5. So without further ado, I want to take a moment to thank these hard workers in such a very, very difficult school year. They came out on their own time, and we continue to grow and learn together. So that was an absolute pleasure. So on behalf of Dr. Parker and our office, I want to say thank you guys for all of your hard work.
Morgan Bailey. And we're going to call out the names of those who aren't here just to recognize them. It certainly is raining hard. So Meredith Birdwell, Adriana Cardona, Claire Compton, Taylor Delka. Shonda Dix and Stacy Donaldson. Tara Herndon. Kayla Livingston. Donald May. Winston McCown. Cindy Moylan. Brian Monk. Teresa Phelps. Kadada Racy. Zach Reeder. Dawn Self-Turpin. Daniel Schoenfeld. Randy Stewart. Jill Tucker. And Cynthia Weber. Thank you, school board, for this recognition for our attendees. We
Thank you. They were trying to
appreciate
find a place to take a picture.
They're
If y'all
trying to
need to
find-
come back in here, come back in and take whatever you need to take the picture. It's not, if they're trying to find a place, Megan, because it's raining and I don't know where they're gonna. Okay, just offer. Thank you. If they don't, Bob, you're up next, so just so you know, okay. We'll wait and see if she needs. Are you welcome to get started, and then we'll stop if we need to, if they need to come in and take a quick picture. All right, next is the, first of all, Becky, do we have anybody sign up to speak? Okay, there were no oral speakers tonight, so we'll go to operations report, quarterly demographics and housing analysis. Bob, we're glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Chadwell. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Well, it's been a crazy year, no doubt, and it's been the most unusual year because we've seen such a divergence of things happening. And if you remember a year ago when the pandemic started, we interviewed builders across the country and were preparing for about a 20% reduction in the amount of new home construction. We actually modified our forecast and reduced the forecast based upon a reduction in new housing back in March a year ago. And here we are a year later, and what has happened? Well, we've seen the exact opposite of that. We actually had a record-breaking year for new home construction across the country. It's been the most bizarre thing that I've ever seen, because normally when the unemployment rate goes as high as it did back in March of a year ago, it went to 13%. Under any other times in history, we would have seen a reduction in new home start activity. But what indeed happened was the opposite of that. Now, the enrollment was down this year, but it had nothing to do with the housing market. It had everything to do with COVID concerns and just the across the country reaction to concern. And as you may be well aware, we saw a pretty significant improvement in the unemployment rate when we opened back up last spring, late last spring, early summer. And you can see the unemployment rate in the Texas and the DFW area bounced between about 6% and 8%. I do expect it's going to continue to just work its way down over the next several months as a majority of the adult population in Texas that wants a vaccine has had the opportunity to get one. And so we're seeing more of leisure, hospitality, the entertainment industries are now starting to open back up. And so that's going to also be a plus for summer tourism and travel, especially in Texas. So we do expect the unemployment rates to continue to go down. Now, the housing market is suffering a little bit of a shock due to escalation of material costs. Material costs have gone up significantly, specifically lumber. So the cost of housing is continuing to climb. It's a combination of a shortage of supply and the increased demand. And so the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the Austin area are the two hottest markets in Texas for jobs and for relocations coming in. So we're seeing very good news with relocations coming into the DFW region, and the job outlook is very, very good. The unemployment rate in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is about 6.5%. And I don't have Austin on here, but Austin is a little bit better than that as well. But it's much better than it is in Houston. It's much better than it is in San Antonio. So the Dallas-Fort Worth area is doing quite well.
Bob, I know when you're going to get the starts, but is that the reason our starts fell off to 320? Just because
Yes.
nobody wanted to start a house because the costs are so high, building cost?
On the starts, it's because there's so much under construction. So there's a tremendous amount that's under construction, and due to the constraints on the supply chain, so it's taking longer to build houses.
Gotcha.
And that has caused a little bit of a slowdown. But the other big factor is the shortage of lots. The lot supply is down. And so then there's a tremendous amount of vacant developed lots that are in the development process. There's over 2,800 lots that are scheduled to be delivered over the next few months. Of course, the weather's going to have somewhat of an impact on that, but the lot supply and the supply chain are really the two factors on the start coming down.
Are they finding enough labor? Because
No, there's a shortage of labor.
shortage of labor also?
Yes. So it's the labor, the cost, and the shortage of lots. And so those factors are really what's caused the slowdown in starts. So we could see a slowdown that's going to last a couple of quarters, but we do expect it's going to pick right back up once we get those issues dealt with.
All right, thank you.
Now, I touched on the enrollment decline, but I wanted to put it in context of what we're seeing across the state and across the country. Now, this year's enrollment for the state of Texas was right at 5.37 million school-age kids in Texas, which was the first time in our history that we saw a decline in enrollment. We've never seen a decline in enrollment in Texas. And this year it went down about 120,000 kids. Now, I believe we should be comparing it to what's actually here. So if we hadn't had the pandemic, we're still the fastest growing state in the country for population. Our enrollment would have likely have been at about 5.5 million kids. That's the continued growth of about 60,000 kids. Now, we think this is setting up a record-breaking year again, but it's going to be a good record. It's a good record of growth. We think next year's enrollment for the fall across the state of Texas is going to be around 5.6 million kids, which is an increase of about 180 to 200,000 kids of growth in Texas. A majority of that decline this year was at pre-K kindergarten first. It was those younger elementary grade levels. And I know that's what we saw within your school district as well. It was those younger grade levels. Most of those simply did not engage in learning. They took a gap year. So we do believe that we're going to see a large number of 6-year-olds that are going to show up that are going to be wanting to be in either kindergarten or first. So there's going to be a surge, and we built that into the projections for next year. Now, looking at the big picture, yes.
Do you think it's going to create an anomaly as far as that class size?
I think it could. And it's going to be, tricky to determine of those 6-year-olds that show up, because some of them will have not had any time in classrooms. So therefore, should they be in kindergarten or should they be in first? And so it is going to create a little bit of a bubble or an anomaly there in first or kindergarten. Now, when we look at Region 11, I've outlined Eagle Mountain Saginaw in green. During the 5-year period between 2015 and 2020, you'd grown about 10.7%, but keep in mind this year caused a little bit of an anomaly. So that's kind of a little bit of a factor there. You did have enrollment growth this year. So it wasn't as much as we had forecasted, but we had a lot of our clients that had negative enrollment. Denton to the north, they're actually building more houses than any school district in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, and yet their enrollment went down about 600 kids, negative 600 kids. So we had a lot of clients that had that effect where their enrollment went down. So yours did go up. It went up about 200 kids. And I know you've grown throughout the school year. So you've seen some growth. Now, based on the enrollment trends in Region 11, you're ranked 3rd based on the 5-year enrollment growth. Your 5-year enrollment growth was 2,054. Your 1-year growth was about 1.1% or about 221 kids. Now, in terms of annual starts and closings, the annual closing number is 2,295. You'll notice the start number is down at 2,007. You've got 652 homes that are in inventory. That's homes that are under construction. That vacant developed lot supply, that is low. That normally is about a 2-year supply. And so we're way under that. So we've got about 1,241 vacant developed lots. We have 18,735 futures. So there's plenty of development interest, and the futures are concept plans, future phases. So it is giving us an indication that there is still work that's going on to get lots delivered. It's a little bit out of sync on timing, and hopefully we can get those delivered this spring and this summer so we can maintain that 2,300 homes per year. Now, looking at it by the quarter, you'll notice in 2020, every one of our quarters for starts was over 500. And, you know, your second quarter of 2020 was 593. But yes, the first quarter in 2021 dropped off to 320. I don't see that as an economic problem. It's really a function of the availability of the materials, the cost, and the vacant developed lot supply. Now, here's breaking out the single family data by your elementary zones. Comanche Springs is your most active elementary zone. They've started 420. Your second most active zone is Lake Point with 351. Your third most active is Elkins with 257. But look at, you've got many others, several others that are building more than 100 homes per year. So your growth is still spread out across the district. Now, here's the big picture. Those green shaded areas are active subdivisions. We've got about 1,200 lots, which that is a little bit low. There's 32 active subdivisions. There's 18,700 futures that are in 37 subdivisions. There is groundwork underway on 2,800 lots. That's one of the highest amounts of groundwork activity of all of our clients in DFW. So they know they're behind. And those red outlines, where you see a red outline, that is where the development is taking place. So that's where the new lots will be coming, where you see a red outline around either a green or a yellow shaded area. We're also tracking about 120 multifamily units that are under construction and about 500 multifamily units that are in various stages of planning. So it's in the works. They haven't started yet. I'll send an additional map that shows you where the multifamily is under construction. I apologize that they didn't include a separate map for that because it's really, you can't pick it out from this map. Now I want to touch on the charter schools. So despite the state's enrollment declining 120,000 kids this year, charter school enrollment actually went up 29,000 kids. And it was the result of opening of new campuses. So they opened multiple campuses across the state of Texas, and it was the opening of new campuses where we saw this biggest increase in the enrollment. The biggest ones that we're watching now are IDEA. They are Great Hearts. Most of those that opened this past year opened south of here. They opened in the Fort Worth School District and in Birdville ISD. The international leadership really hasn't opened much lately, so we're not seeing them expanding as much. But we do know there's going to be a future charter that's going to be opening up in Denton. This next year, we don't have any charters opening in the close proximity of Eagle Mountain, Saginaw, so we're not seeing any for this next year. But the charter research is very hard because the Texas Education Agency notices that they send out do not have good addresses of where it's going to be opening. They typically just give us the region, and then we have to find out the opening from the city minutes or from their permitting process. That's how we find it. The charter schools are also not very good with the open records request that we submit. But so far this next year, we're not seeing an impact for the Eagle Mountain Saginaw in terms of charter school competition. Now, what I wanted to, when I layered in that January 2021 enrollment number, I wanted you to see how much change has happened since October. So that orange line represents the October enrollment where you had 21,107. And then the kind of red line is the January enrollment. You'll notice that it went up to 21,235. I suspect if we looked at your enrollment right now, your elementary numbers would be up even more. So we have seen a significant surge in the elementary enrollments with our clients. So we are already seeing some of that COVID return. Next year's forecasted enrollment, and I feel very good about these numbers. We're forecasting growth of 5.56, which is 11,174 students of growth for next year. Then you'll notice it kind of settles in at about 900 to 1,000 for the next 2 years. And then if we see housing stays above that 2,200, then we may be looking at those years 7, 8, 9, 10. Those numbers could be higher than the 700. So I would encourage us to look at next year and then to look at the next 3 years, where I think that within 5 years, your enrollment could be at about 25,985. At the campus level, we have built in the Lake Country Elementary opening of about 518 students for next year. And then you'll notice that the elementary is seeing a big growth. So a lot of the decline in this year's enrollment was at those elementary grade levels. So that's why we're seeing the biggest growth across the elementary is that COVID return from families. So we're estimating that the enrollment for elementary schools next fall would be at about 10,038. And you'll notice then we've got, Lake Point that gets back to its capacity in about 2022. And then by 2023, Comanche Springs and Dozier Elementaries could be at or near capacity. At the middle schools, it's Wayside Middle School. That's the near capacity for the next 2 years. And then Marine Creek stays well over 1,000 students for the foreseeable future. By 2023, Wayside is expected to be at about almost 1,100 students. And our high schools are in that 22 to 23, 2,400 students at both Boswell High School and at Chisholm Trail. Eagle Mountain ISD's enrollment did increase this year, and we did see a 5-year increase of about 10.7%. The 1-year increase was right at 1.1%. There's about 1,200 lots available to build on, so that is a little bit of a concern to watch. Within Eagle Mountain ISD, there are more than 18,700 futures, and there's about 2,800 lots that are in development. Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD will enroll more than 25,900 students in 5 years, and in 10 years, we expect your enrollment to be at about 29,500. Be happy to answer any questions.
Bob, I have a question. And of course, we have no way of knowing whether this is going to happen or not, but there is a current plat of land across the street from Willow Creek that is right now commercial. There's a multifamily plot, and then there's and I'm sure you're aware of both of those. And they're trying to get that other one zoned to a planned development. It's going to be 166. That's not included in here, right? Okay.
So typically, when they go through that kind of zoning change, we wait until it goes through the change, and then we'll build it into our model. Multifamily is a little bit evolving right now. So there's been some movement out of multifamily because of the pandemic. But now because housing affordability is so high, it's so expensive, that we are seeing that there are families that are having to stay in multifamily just because of the cost.
Yeah, they're requesting the change as a planned development, so it's
It'll be mixed.
3 and 4 bedroom,
Uh-huh.
2-story houses.
Yes, that's another good point. We are seeing a high amount of, and you have one of these, single family for rent.
Yes, that's what this is.
And so that is becoming more prevalent, where the builders are building single family and multifamily. That's a little different product that will be always for rent. And they do tend to yield similar to apartments, and it's dependent upon the number of 3 bedrooms. So the more 3 bedrooms, then the higher the yield.
What about used house? I mean, what about houses that are, this is new construction, but as soon as a house goes on the market, it seems to be purchased. And I just know the ones around me, it seems to be couples without children selling to couples with children.
There's a real shortage of supply of existing homes. In fact, it's been said that there are more realtors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area than there are existing homes for sale. The inventory is that low. Part of it goes to the pandemic, where there was concerned families that didn't want to have traffic through their homes during the pandemic, so they didn't list their homes. So we did have a shortage of supply, but no doubt they are selling at above list price, and they're selling very quickly. So it is but there is a shortage of supply of existing homes.
My question was really, is there a factor that you put in if it's no school children going and selling to school children? Is it the same ratio that you put in?
It tends to be.
Okay.
But, with that said, the existing home prices are going up too. So it's even starting to outprice some younger families. And so that'll be something we'll watch very closely. We've actually started a project for all of our clients where we are taking the home sales and comparing it to the geocodes. So we can see, okay, what was in a house before it sold and what's in the house after it sold. So we can do that analysis on, okay, is there a change happening because of the existing home sales?
Either way.
Two
more kids or less kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What we suspect is happening is that we're seeing less younger kids in the existing home sales because the price is getting so high. And what's happening is, it's crazy. D.R. Horton, History Maker, all of these production builders, because the land is so expensive in the close proximity to Dallas-Fort Worth, are going out even further. So to get to a $200,000 priced home, you have to go to Alvarado. You got to go to Venus. You got to go, further out to get to the land cost being low enough that they can get the homes priced there. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if the demand is going to be there to commute that far in or drive in.
Are you saying, Steve, anecdotally, you're seeing something different than that? You're seeing.
Well, I don't know. That's what I was asking, if he had seen that differently. I just I know, about the ones around me, and
Right.
it seems that's what's going on, is it's a couple selling and then.
And I
there's
feel like
more
my
and more
neighborhood, I
kids.
feel like we have more kids.
Yeah,
than
more
we
kids on the
used to, yeah.
street kind of deal.
Yeah. Your price point is still pretty good compared to the overall Metroplex. So, in Prosper now, the average price is over $400,000 for an existing home. New homes are at that $450,000 to $460,000 range. And your average price for a new home is still right around $300,000. So it's a little better, and that still feels really high to me, but it is, a little lower than what we're seeing in some of the other areas.
Thank you. Anybody else? Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming in. Now that Bob is finished, we've kind of finished with everybody else that's given a report. The ones that are left are those of you that are here already. So we are going to go a little early into closed session so we can get back out at 7. So it is currently 5:35 p.m. on May 24th, 2021. This board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Section 551.071, consultation with board's attorney. 551.072, purpose of deliberating real property. 551.074, considering the appointment, employment, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including contract renewals for district employees. 551.075, for the purpose of deliberation regarding the deployment of security. And we will hear tonight in closed session a review of the district's emergency operating procedures. 551.082, considering discipline of a public school child. And 551.0821, discuss specific personal identifying information about a student. Saginaw Independent School District. This board is reconvening the public meeting on May 24th, 2021 at 7:04 p.m. and will now consider the subject set forth in the posted agenda. Thank you for rejoining us after our meeting section, report section at 5. To start the 7 o'clock section, we're going to have opening ceremonies by Ed Wilkie Middle School. Dr. Chapel.
All right, we're pleased to have Ed Wilkie Middle School represented today by video, and we have 4 students that will be part of the program and doing our pledges, and we'll have Kirk take it away. Thank you.
This is Ed Wilkie Middle School. I'm Brian Booker, the principal.
I'm Molly Muldowney.
I'm Natalie Kep.
I'm Griffin Benj.
I'm Bethany Benj.
Please stand for the pledges. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please stay standing for the moment of silence.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Go Badgers!
Naturally, this time. You want to read about it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right, I want to give you a little bit of information about our 4 students that just did our program. First is Natalie Kep. Natalie is a member of the student council on the A-team basketball, track A-team soccer, co-captain, athletics council president, and participates in the GT Humanities program while earning high school credit in Spanish 1 and Algebra 1. And also Molly Muldowney. Natalie's parents are Christine and Matthew Kep. Now, also Molly Muldowney. Molly is an 8th grader. Her parents are Melissa and Scott Muldowney. Molly is involved in student council and is also the president of the student council and National Junior Honor Society president. She enjoys drawing, cheerleading, photography, spending time with her friends and family, making TikTok videos, or snuggling with her puppies. She's also a member of the Renaissance Club and 2021-22 freshman cheer captain. Next is Griffin Bing. Griffin is a 7th grader. Parents are Violet and Thomas Bing. Organizations include band, cross country, and soccer. Interests include music, gardening, swimming, and fishing. And Griffin hopes to pursue a career in engineering. And also Bethany Bing. Bethany is in 7th grade. Parents are also Violet and Thomas Bing. Involved in band and cheer. Interests include art, music, reading, and swimming. And Bethany hopes to pursue a career in art.
Thank you, Dr. Chapel. Next is communications. We have a special introduction. Dr. Parker.
Yes. If Beth Sanders would join me here at the podium. Thank you. This is our, you may recognize Beth Sanders, as she's been the principal 4 years at High Country Elementary School, and she has been named the new Director of Continuous Improvement and Professional Development. We're very excited about Beth taking over in this role. As you know, Karen Miller has done an incredible job as director there, but as she goes into retirement, it's exciting to have Beth, because Beth has trained under Karen Miller, which is excellent. She has so many extensive training in the work of system development and implementation, as well as professional training. She has instructional coaching from the results coaching piece. She's worked with teacher mentorship. She just completed a year in Into Learning's Principals Institute, which develops strong leaders in new and innovative ideas and in systems management. She's earned accolades as both the Teacher of the Year and Assistant Principal of the Year, and I believe with her strengths, she's going to continue to carry our work with Aspire 2025 and just do an outstanding job. So join me in welcoming her to her new role, which starts about June 7th. So you're welcome to say if you have a few words.
Well, I will say just that I'm extremely honored that I'm being trusted with this position. I feel like it's very valuable and important, and I hope that I'm able to serve the district to the same level that I've been able to serve as a principal. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. We now move back to a report section. We moved this up in front of the action items in our new agenda format. So we're going to go back to report B2, which is operations report, and it's construction update. And Lee? It's page 31 of your board book.
First off, we have the new administration building, so we have some drone pictures. So one, I think, recurring theme that you'll see in the pictures is this. We took these on May 11th. That was the first day it was raining, so it really hadn't stopped since that time period. So it's all accurate as far as what the weather looks like. But you can see that Mustang Rock has been connected, and it's moving right along down toward the main building. And when you look at this, the outline of the building, you see the piers, you can kind of get an idea of how it's setting and where it's going to be planted onto that property. If you notice onto the south, you'll start to see where they're starting in the, that'll be with the superintendent's office, operations, finance area. And to the left where the machinery is, that is where the boardroom is located. This is, I guess, facing west, so the stormwater connection has been put in place. You can see that long, narrow thing, where the dirt's coming through there from the main property.
Is that running toward the lake? Is that what it's doing?
It'll run into the lake. And you can see more of the parking lot that has been poured in that area, but we've not progressed much more on that because of the rain. It's just kind of hampered us on that part. And this is a better close-up. It shows that main area that I was mentioning a while ago where the operations is located right there on the corner. And you can see that main grate being dug in there. Now that's a kind of a creek, but that's, anyway, they're still working on it and progressing, but it is a challenge. At Boswell High School, it's kind of facing the same thing. And obviously the photos are in the rain. So one of the biggest things that I guess has hampered us is outside projects. You know, we had the winter storm and then we've had this rain. So, you know, you're losing around a month of construction time outside. So as of last Thursday, though, the contractor said they'll make it the time that for the first home game, it's still in play.
Really?
So,
I mean, the admin building, losing a month is not a big deal, but this one had such a tight timeline.
It was already tight and
yeah.
we lost time. So it's one of those where I'm not, I'm kind of skeptical. You know, it's a lot of things are going to have to be good from now on. Looks like it needs to be dry. You know, we can't lose any more days. You know,
they have alternative plans if perhaps they don't meet their goal.
Mm-hmm. The main building, as far as athletics, you know, it's inside, so that really is not impacted there. So as long as the trades can get in there, they're still working on that. So we're going to get outside. We're going to get the flat work completed, and obviously, you can see most of the there's a little bit of masonry to do on the press box, and then the bleachers go in. The grandstands on the visitors still need to drill the piers, and then put the.
Is that the main thing holding it up is drilling the piers?
On the visitor side.
Because of the wet, because of the ground being wet?
Yeah, you can't get the equipment on it.
Is the press box not dried in though, right? It's got a roof?
No, it's still open. So it's got a roof, but it doesn't have any walls. It's got some, you can see the studs in it on the back and the front. The turf room, the old turf room is no longer. It's just gone. So that part was big, so that happened last week. So it is kind of opening up in the back and things are happening. They can still work, but there's, as far as having a game and those critical things, it's just too wet right now on that part.
Is our sub-varsity field or our other field, is it affected also, where they couldn't have junior high games there if they don't progress any as expected?
I think what the athletic department, well, they have a couple of choices, but they'll probably have to play on multiple nights so they can play on the auxiliary field, but they will be able, we have to have the auxiliary field.
Okay.
So
It's not going to be, it can still be played upon when school starts.
yes, sure can. And I'm not sure they're working on it till the last almost day. So they always have a place to practice. Okay, on the bottom left, you can kind of see where the mountain of dirt, that's where the visitors' bleachers are to be located. You can see the little door there for the weight room. There's two of them in the big picture on the right. It's pouring down, so obviously I didn't go inside there. I couldn't get into it. It's kind of funny, moisture conditioning for the structures. It's completed. That's the black, but I thought that anyway. Never mind. But we're still shooting for August 30th on the stadium, so that's where it's at. And that's kind of the rebar for the visitor side, just sitting in the mud. But as soon as we get any updated information that says that we don't feel like we'll make it, and if that happens later in the summer, we'll obviously work with athletics and firm, that up with their other. I know they've worked on the contingency plans. So Lake Country. You can see all the mud there, obviously there, but the thing about it, the things that are lagging on this project are the outside. It's the landscape. So when you go in the computer lab, there's carpet on the floor. The office area has carpet in it. Two of the four hallways have carpet. So things are happening on that part. I really don't fear it not making it. The outside, that looks like a challenge. To get all the grass in and get all that done in time. So again, we're gonna need some good weather. Make that happen. The trees are in, and the irrigation's in. It's just a matter of being able to get the machinery out there, level everything off and start putting the.
Is everything concrete that's gonna be? The rest of it, the
sidewalks are not, the flat work's not in.
The flat work's not in.
Right. Because kind of like the machinery, you see how it gets right along the brick, it kind of just starts tearing up the flat work, so they like to wait to the very end. Okay, that's just one of the library on the left, and so they're painting and putting in light fixtures, and the top right, they're painting and they're pulling wire, and that's kind of the bottom one there, showing that. You're looking at sheetrock and all this, and this was 12 days ago, whatever that was, May 11th. So, I mean, this didn't have carpet in it at that time. Now it does. Two of the hallways, I believe, also have the flooring down the hallway. So it's covered up. It's just going to be a big mad rush at the very end to get it done. But I don't feel it.
When are they supposed to turn it over to us? Isn't it in July? The building?
No. It's like August the 2nd is when we're going to let the staff get in there. Because we'll need, they have contractually end of June, and we have to put in furniture, put all our curriculum supplies, get it all that. It's kind of, it'll be a juggle.
Punch list.
In fact, they've started some of the touch-up paint in the main office on the punch list already. So even though you see some of that, certain areas are being punched already.
Occupancy, have you stated that?
1st of August, 2nd of August, whatever that first Monday is. And there's the roof on the mud, and partitions are coming in for the restrooms. And at this time, see there's no grid in that upstairs, and that's the there's 4 main hallways, and that will be the top one. That's the last one that will finish up. So you can see it's dragging behind from the other pictures. I mean, not that it's dragging, it's just they get phased in. And the turf projects, Chisholm Trail is underway. It has a large hole in it out there in the baseball field. And maybe they've mobilized now. It's been raining since Saginaw, so hopefully they've mobilized there. sometime last week. So those things are progression. Saginaw Elementary should be completed this week and ready for summer school. So we're progressing with that one. One of the things that Bob showed, and when you look at the demographic report, you saw some of those elementaries and you saw the yellow come across there. So I thought I'd just wait till my point came up. And so when you look at Lake Point, where it's going to reach capacity in a couple of years, well, to relieve that, to me, that is elementary 18 that we currently have in our bond program. And we're looking at land to purchase that and build elementary 18 to address that. But when you look at elementary 19 and 20, we don't have any more elementaries. And we're going to need them within 3 or 4 years. So we're going to have to look at another bond program to consider that for these other schools. And any replacement elementary we'd want to consider. But like Comanche Springs, that would be like roughly elementary 19. We already own land for that one. And elementary 20 would relieve Dozier, Parkview, and we own the land for that one. So we're in good shape. We just need to have the buildings to be able to put them on the property.
Clete, I was kind of more curious about like Copper Creek. We built it for 800 and it doesn't look like it's ever going to get above about 600. So are there some adjustments that we're going to need to be doing? Because several of them, Northbrook looks kind of the same way. Remington Point, Saginaw, Gillen.
Well,
it doesn't look like, it looks like we got 400 kids at Gillen and never going to get above 400, but we can put 700 there. So is there no way to relieve Northbrook or other areas?
When you look at capacity, we've had that conversation. It depends on what programs are there. So if we ask the principal or we pulled up the target capacity, they, I believe, have 1 to 2 rooms only open at Gillen. So even though that's a lower number, there's a program there. And that creates
Copper Creek, the one we just built, that has 400 kids in it, we built it for 800.
Well, that's kind of like Lake Country. It's going to open with 400 to 500 kids and it grows. And Copper Creek, its main feeder is all those homes that are around it. And kind of like Bob showed you earlier.
But he doesn't show Copper Creek ever getting, it shows that most kids it's ever going to have is 670 in his 10-year forecast on page 12 of the board.
Okay, so when you get into the matrix of that, you look over and on your form there and you look at Chisholm Ridge. It's topping out and getting close to capacity. It's right next to Copper Creek. Okay. There needs to be an adjustment there at some point. That's kind
of what I'm saying. The point is we're going to be able to adjust those to relieve some of that because according to this projection, they never get full if we got room for.
See, Bob doesn't, in a sense, doesn't know kind of how the pure feeder really, we talk about it when it's time and we test all our numbers. But that would be the plan for Copper Creek.
Okay.
Mr. Welch, does Comanche Springs Elementary, that whole division, does that connect to the Copper Creek area?
It's divided by a railroad with no connection.
Oh, okay.
So at some point, it'll either be a bridge or an underpass. Heritage Trace needs to be connected.
Okay.
And currently it is not connected.
Okay. Because that could possibly be a possibility to.
Well, short term it could, but not long term because of the amount of homes that are going in at the Krantz site and also the Todd site, which is a brand new one. Last Monday, last time we had a board meeting, I was going home, it was still daylight. There's another housing addition that blew up just off Wagner Roberts at 600 homes that divides northwest of Eagle Mountain, Saginaw. So there's an explosion of homes in that whole area. That's what's driving for Krantz's farm, that site in the future.
Maybe we could do another update. You've done those for us periodically where you've talked through kind of where you might move some of the players and maybe it's time to do another one of those with all the growth that we're experiencing.
I sound like former board member Tim Dennis, but if we can move them around a little bit, we could save building that 19th or 20th, put it off a few years. It saves hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if they're connected, I also would be kind of interested in getting refreshed on the feeder pattern that we've got that goes elementary, middle, high school.
Yeah, because we've had replanning and things like that. So, I mean, it might be a great time to do the overall update. As well as, I hate to ask this, but the capacity piece too. If we've got schools, just if we could highlight on there, if there's a program that limits that capacity, maybe highlighting that for us as well.
Yeah, we've got that.
Yeah, because
Because I'm looking at something and reading something that, as you just pointed
had the
out,
same
Gillen
reaction.
is not accurate at all.
No, North Elkins.
Yeah, or else.
That.
I didn't mention
They're almost
Elkins,
at full
but-
capacity,
Okay.
but they're not gonna reach that magical
Yeah,
number
the number.
unless we move the program.
Right.
And with pre-K, and again, that's another.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Next.
So what's driving the future is the high school attendance zones. If we're gonna have pure feeders, it makes it much more difficult to, now, short term, we can do that, but if we want to have those feeders, it becomes a bigger challenge. So that's what we've been working on the last 2 months is the high school feeder pattern. And
As you add the elementaries, to have a true feeder pattern, and you're gonna have to add 2 more middle schools.
That's
eventually
correct.
To get to the same
That's correct.
result. It does take a lot of planning in it.
Yes, because the high school drives it, whatever that number is, that magical 2,500, then that determines how many middle school kids you're gonna have, then the elementary, and then the programs and where they're at. So it's a puzzle.
Yeah.
And,
We appreciate that and understand, I mean, we do, we're not trying to be difficult about that, but we do want to be aware if there's some things that can be done under
no,
y'all's.
I would enjoy, Dwayne and I would enjoy going over that with you.
I bet so, okay.
We're gonna go fast too, it'll be fun.
Hey, Clay, this goes back one, but you mentioned carpet, that carpet's going down the country elementary school hallways. Is that accurate? I thought we were going away from carpet, am I incorrect? Like, I thought we were replacing the greenfield, pull the carpet up in the hallways.
Carpet is in the admin area. The main hallway is VCT or LVT, luxury vinyl tile. It's covered up.
Okay.
And the classrooms have the carpet.
Okay,
So I misspoke if
it's not coming from next year, it's not new carpet like we had
And just
in the past. Yeah.
Too much traffic.
And as far as timeline and bringing that back to you all, would
We can talk about this for as long,
would you like to bring it in?
I think it
July?
would be good to have it with the bond. I mean, it all kind of fits together
Okay.
in my mind.
Okay.
It could all be done at the same time.
Sure.
Whenever that is,
Okay.
whenever we're gonna be talking about it.
Okay.
Anybody want any earlier than that?
Okay. And so we'll work on a
Yeah,
timeline and
just kinda
then
hold-
share that with y'all what we'll do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We've always done a good job of planning ahead, Dr. Chadwell. I just want to make sure we continue
Sure.
that if we're not sitting here caught going, well, we need elementary 19, but where are we going to put it and how are we going to pay for it? So I think that projection for the bond and then
Right.
how we can get to that point, whether it's redoing attendance zones or just making sure we utilize all the space that we have.
Good. And one of the things that were mentioned is in regards to pre-K, and right now, what we have and look to continue to have is more of a hybrid situation where we have one main pre-K for those campuses that could not sustain their own pre-K, and then those that can sustain their own pre-K because they have the numbers, is to try to put those on campus, and so those kids would stay there from pre-K all the way through 5th grade. So I call that a hybrid approach. Some do all centralized and some do all distributed. We have a number of schools that just simply wouldn't have enough pre-K qualified kids to sustain a proper program. And so that's also something that we can discuss with y'all, what we're seeing, because that has a real huge swing in how we do things as well. So we'll bring that to you.
And is that, could it be more than one pre-K classroom in a certain school?
Sure.
So some of them may need 2 or 3 classrooms, and others
Exactly.
don't need a classroom at all.
Exactly. So you have you have situations where you have, go ahead.
We try to put 2 to the campus where we have a pre-K so that they can plan together.
Mhm.
We sometimes, I think we have a couple of schools that'll have 3 classrooms just because of the numbers. But it's been, Lisa Dunn and Stacy DeHoy have done an incredible job of not only recruiting the kids, you're seeing an increase there just like all projected, but also in the placement, it's falling naturally into those areas where we're planning on housing those next year, including some of the schools you mentioned just now,
Okay.
like Copper Creek, Northbrook, Gilliland, Elkins, will continue to grow those.
And is anybody doing that as a separate school or like a Hapley Development Center for the pre-K?
Like in other school districts, you see every combination. You have people that centralize, those are mainly smaller school districts. Ours is being divided by the number of railroad tracks. That makes it a lot harder just as far as movement of people going to a centralized location. And you have districts that do it purely distributed to their campuses. So you see everything. You see every combination.
And no really right or wrong? I mean,
No,
rhyme or
and you'll
reason
see
to it.
people highlight themselves. They'll have a pre-K center, yet that pre-K center cannot necessarily sustain the number of qualified pre-K students, particularly with the law changing to full day. So that's affected things as well. It actually, that and special programs provides a lot of flexibility. When we talk about efficiencies, I look at those two things before I look at attendance boundaries, because pre-K is a year, okay? And special programs, you don't want to move people around a lot. Like every year, for example, but if you can plan ahead, you can utilize that instead of changing an entire attendance boundary where you may affect 15, 20% of the campus population. So we look at all of it when we're making the determination. So if we're going to make an attendance boundary change, we would wish for it to be permanent, or at least for a good period of time versus a year or two, something like that. We saw that with Dozier. If y'all remember, we opened up Dozier and a similar report showed the numbers to be relatively low, and then boom, we're full. And part of that is the difference between vacant developed lots and futures. Futures is something like he was talking about, driving past a piece of property that no one had contacted us. It's not on our list, and all of a sudden that changes the whole report in that area. So we do have some of that scenario as well.
Well, he talked about a couple neighborhoods tonight where that's the case. They're not in his numbers. So
Right.
Yes.
The one Marilyn mentioned, there wasn't in his numbers at all.
And it's hard, and just to explain, I know y'all understand, but just for anybody who's listening, is they're not in the numbers because if you look at the whole 73 square miles, a portion of that's undeveloped. But there are things that can occur that would open that property up. So the property in question that Dr. Tolbert talked about is property that's been vacant forever. And there's been a lot of things talked about, and all of a sudden it's become very real in the last 8 weeks in reality from a developer. And so that could go cold. It wouldn't surprise me if tomorrow they said, okay, we're not going to build. And then all of a sudden it goes cold for a year or two.
Well,
So
and
we're
they
having
had
to
to
watch
get
that
a
as well.
zoning change, as I understood it, so that he didn't consider it a viable multi-unit or whatever the
Right.
building code was until the zoning board actually approved it. Whether
Correct.
it's Fort Worth or Saginaw. I don't-
It's Saginaw.
Saginaw.
And there's also a conversion of commercial to multifamily, which we've stated we have concerns about that because in our tax base, we need a good balance of commercial and residential property. And so it's not a deal breaker necessarily, but we do have a concern if a good amount of commercial property is going to turn into residential, because we need that commercial tax base as well to balance out the lean times in your taxable assessed values. So we look at all of it.
Well, that's a good segment into our next report,
Yep.
which is a finance report. Rob, budget update. We segue right to you, Rob. Wonderful. And if you notice, I've gone away from calling you Mr. Welch. Mr. Welch, I've just gone with Cleet and Rob. So I apologize if that's too informal, but.
Works for us,
All right.
by all means. All right. Well, just wanted to bring a couple items from the business office tonight. First item or first area is the current 2020-2021 budget. A couple little updates. As we are coming to the end of the school year now, we're projecting out towards the end of the year, the fiscal year, end of August. And right now, both our revenues and expenditures are roughly about equal. And we've also factored in looking at some of our end of year adjustment entries and making estimates for them. And so with that, we believe our fund balance will see a marginal difference. Right now it's just looking relatively flat. And so as we get a little closer, of course, we're still 3 months left in the year. And so projections can change a little bit. But we have, at this point, looking back and seeing that we've actually accomplished quite a bit with this year's budget. We had about, it was a unique year by all means, and a lot of things that we, didn't start the year off knowing that we're going to be spending money on, and we were able to cover about $4 million in items that we didn't know when we adopted the budget back in August. So we've accomplished a lot with it, both through some additional resources, but also through conservative spending in other areas. So we felt like this year, right now, we're looking for the year to end, like I said, with minimal increase or changes to the fund balance. If we, a couple other areas, we do know that we still have ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds, and that might still impact our current budget over the next few months as we determine the use of how we're going to utilize those funds. And then if we look at another item of note that we are wanted to point out was that our technology department and our budget team work very closely, and we're able to apply and receive the maximum entitlements both under the coronavirus relief fund as well as the prior purchase reimbursement program. That totaled over $5 million of additional resources for the district. Most of that would be in technology, but a significant achievement. I've got to give credit to those teams, and that's a lot of money for this district.
Bob, does that go into a special fund on the financial report, or to be accounted for or audited like our other special federal funds?
It does. It comes into a special revenue federal fund, and so it's separate of the general fund, except for we had about $1.5 million that we applied for that were expenditures in the prior year, and so those funds actually came back into the general fund. So about $3.5 million of the funds went in or outside of the general fund through a special fund, and going directly to those technology expenditures, and then about 1.5 actually came back into the general fund to recoup some of those costs that we had.
When we see the audit for this year, would we expect to see a separate column for federal funds? And is ESSER 2 and 3 going to be inside that?
They will be a part of the special revenue funds. Okay. Yes, and so, in the back of the audit, we have a list of individual, the actual individual 20, 25 different federal funds or grants. And so there'll be a column in that will roll to the summary column in the schedule.
It would add right to the bottom line then, at the end of the day?
It will. Yes.
Right to general, at the end of the day, it'll all be in the fund balance.
Well, it won't be in the general fund balance, but it will be, those will be
So
funds.
that's designated funds that have to be spent on those items?
Well, these funds, this is more of a reimbursement program, so revenues and expenditures equate out to zero at the end of the day, at the end of the audit. So they really won't impact fund balance because even in those special funds, the set aside monies, the 3.5 million that we've gotten that's sitting over there in that special revenue fund, the expenditures equal 3.5 million. And offset the revenue. So
that's how we got that amount, because we specifically applied for relief for that amount of expenses.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
got it.
But just a reminder too, that some of these dollars may be required to roll over into years in the future, or that has to be accounted in that way. We're still receiving some of the rules of how.
I read about that. So they're gonna, then it would kind of be in a designated fund, right? We would have the funds available, but we couldn't spend them on salaries. We would have to spend them on that specific amount. Okay.
Yes, and when we get all the final, they've had a number of meetings online with TEA to get all the different requirements on ESSER 3 first, and now ESSER 2 is coming. And so we'll provide that to you. I think there's probably going to be some special ways that we have to acknowledge that, because that's not something we've received.
Those would be the ones in the future. The ones currently, though, we applied for specific times that were expense, and they're just going to come out of our expenses and zero out in this fund.
Correct. So like, for example, the prior purchase reimbursement program, that's through TEA. And so Texas education agencies may have used federal funds, but I believe that's directly from TEA, correct?
It is.
And through their project connectivity or something?
Yes.
If I'm connecting it right. So that one is accounted for differently than say ESSER 2, ESSER 3, which is coming through the feds. Now, right now, there's legislation out there on ESSER 2. We don't know what's going to happen by the time we get to May 31st, if how that is going to, there's even talk about that being supplanting some expenses. ESSER 3, it doesn't look like it's going to be supplanted, but ESSER 2, I'm a little bit worried about.
There's a bill came through the House today that was going to do that, or through
Yes.
the committees.
Yes. So, and I'm just going to say publicly, that's just completely wrong. I mean, we know, I mean, this is a time period where our comptroller said that numbers are better than they even expected at the beginning. There's purely enough funds to continue to fund school finance through the House Bill 3 commitments and everything. These are dollars that are supposed to be designated for the express purpose to help support us in this year. And of course, the dollars per school district is different based upon the number, by the economics of your community. So there could be a district that gets a lot more than the other. But in the end, if they're going to take all those funds back away, they're not going to put it back in education. They're going to fund something else that they have already have the money to fund. That's the thing, is they're not running into a deficit right now with the comptroller's projections. So there's really no reason other than we either don't trust you to spend it or we don't want you to have it. So we are obviously fighting really hard to have the ability, particularly in this year that's really been difficult. And even going into this next year, just the difficulty of balancing a budget in a COVID year. As he talked about earlier, Bob talked about earlier with the numbers of kids, we actually got about 230 kids. I think that was a number. We expected about 900, 930. Some districts even dropped. We're happy we got 230, but we're expecting about 930. So that's 600 students that we built a staffing plan on that we do not have. And then going into the future, we have to, account for that. For other districts, it's been much worse. They actually lost kids net. And so it's been very significant for them. And these ESSER dollars could help some of those districts. It's not 100% though. So if those districts are high socioeconomic areas, they're probably getting nothing. Or very little.
I was surprised it didn't drop so many on his projection there.
Yes.
Is that one of the reasons they're pushing their virtual to try to recover students?
Yes, that's what they've stated, is that they are using their virtual to offset the drop in student population. And of course, they're larger than us, so that 260 proportionally is different there than it is here, but I think they're concerned about a potential loss in the
They
future.
also projected an increase, so not is it minus 260, but they probably
Correct.
counted on 1,500 kids or more.
Yes, and I'm not sure what that number was, but that's
Yeah.
absolutely the case. Yes, sir.
Kind of got into Linda's report a little bit there. Did you hear that virtual?
Just kind of wrapping up the current budget. So most of the items we've talked about are already in the revised budget. Obviously ESSER and the impact of ESSER is not yet. And then there's still some things that could be adjusted, and we'll bring a final budget amendment, or at least another budget amendment, as we get closer to the end of the school year and have some items closer to our final projections. Then if we look at next year, and working on the components of the 2021-2022 budget, we obviously TABs have continued to be a focus for the district. And we've received our two preliminary reports of estimates from Tarrant Appraisal District. And based on the historical trends in the past for these two reports and where we may end up, I'm still projecting about that 9% growth rate. I still think that that's a target right now. Obviously, we'll keep, as the additional reports, as we get the one in June, we'll go back and revisit again. But right now, I think that that's still our target number. And then the TAB values, as we've talked about in the past, since House Bill 3, they really don't impact our revenue projections as much as they used to, but they do impact the revenue, the M&O tax rate. And that's because of House Bill 3 and the compression components of House Bill 3. So as we get closer to, once we get our certified values, those numbers go into a TEA calculation. And right now, I'm estimating that we could see a 7 to 9 cent decrease out of that calculation from TEA on the M&O rate. And so we'll keep watching that, but also we won't have that number until our July certifieds TAVs come out at the end of July. So
just a reminder, the state picks up the cost for that compressed rate. That's one of the House Bill 3 functions, is when this does occur, the state funds that, and they do have that built into their budget this year, going into this biennium.
yes, thank you.
So that'll be good for our taxpayers, for all of us.
What do they call it? They don't call it hold harmless anymore, though.
No,
right?
sir.
So it's a different, they have another term for it. I'm just.
Well, it's compression. It's
Compression rate.
Yes,
That's what they're called. Okay.
yes, it's a compressed tax rate.
And property tax relief is the other term that they use.
That they're using.
Yes, so between compression and property tax relief.
I guess compression is the function, property tax relief is the whole
Concept.
program concept.
Yeah.
So if there was any bills, that would be kind of keywords if you were searching for
Correct.
anything. Okay.
There's no additional compression bills in this with House Bill 3. They've kind of not touched school finance except around the periphery, like fast growth schools and some of the other funding. But the main core basic allotment, they're not really touching that right now. They're leaving that alone. And we have asked that they really consider again. We've talked to a number of legislators about going with prior year values versus current. That affects us between $9 and $13 million a year.
Yes.
So
There's a big change.
we publicly did not benefit from House Bill 3. That's one of the statements that's made about districts, and a lot did. The greatest majority of the districts did, but there were a few, and there were districts like ours, which are fast growth school districts with a growing property value base. We were significantly affected, and I don't think people properly appreciate the kind of efforts that have to go in infrastructure wise, and I use that word more globally, in order to prepare for new students. That costs more time, energy, staffing, everything in order to prepare for kids, because as y'all talked about earlier, there may be some campuses that run under, but you can't wait till the campus is full and then go build another building. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So we have to prepare for, people ahead of time. And that makes our buildings less efficient staffing wise, at least for a period of time. So that's a challenge.
And it's not isolated to one area of growth. When you're a district like us that's growing all over, then those efficiencies can be spread, or lack of efficiencies. It's a challenge for fast growth districts like us that it's not one little area, it's all over our district. So.
Then you have pre-K, which pre-K is not fully funded. It's partially funded, and being able to deal with that also is exacerbated by the fact that a fast growth district is planning for that as well. So I'm very happy that they're going to compress the tax rate. That's great, but also there are other mechanisms that we wish they would reconsider, such as prior year values, to be able to help for us in growth.
So the other part of the TAVs that we obviously are looking at, we talked about the M&O side and what happens with House Bill 3, but just like before House Bill 3 though, TAVs are still a huge piece of what we do on the INS side, the debt service and how it supports our existing bond program to keep building the buildings to house the students that keep coming. And so staying out ahead of that. So we've been watching the rate, obviously, growth very closely, and want to, that's something that we're going to continue to look at, because if it doesn't align with the student growth, and that obviously becomes a challenge for us, and continue to keep issuances going. So watch that very closely. Again, tying right back with number of starts and number of closings, and seeing how that ties in with our TAV growth. And those are pieces that we need to look at a little bit more over the next month as we prepare for a recommendation. We do know that as we talked about before, we will be needing to issue another set of bonds to continue the funding of the 2017 bond program. And that will need to happen this summer. Our target is to have an action item on the June 21st board agenda. And right now we're targeting about $120 million for that issuance. we'll bring back some additional information with that, but in preparation for that meeting. But we're still pulling some information on our TABs and some analysis to help make that projection.
So we'll be deciding that at the next board meeting, which is like in 3 weeks, and we're going to be basing it on.
And that's a parameters order, so if y'all feel more inclined to have a more conservative parameters order in terms of percentage and so forth, then that's fine. So y'all will have if there's any concerns at all about that.
120 million will be for
to continue
the projects that are currently.
Correct.
Yes.
And also for Eagle Mountain High School to get it started.
Eagle Mountain. Is the remaining 327 and the rest of it?
Yes, sir. It would include elementary 18. It would include completing Eagle Mountain High School. There's some additional projects such as Saginaw High School, athletic area, and some other projects that would be in the 327.
Can you kind of report that back out when you come to us with that action for June?
Yes, sir.
What that's going to be.
We can have that in the
absolutely
update or whatever.
Yeah. And so, and then the 120 million is really, that's targeting to get us through this time or through the summer of next year as well, because same situation, those TAB values are going to be something we're going to be looking at very closely next year, making a decision on funding for the next issuance. So our goal is for the 120 million to carry us through next summer till we can.
So to get us from this summer all the way to next
summer.
So we'd have to go out again.
Yes, sir. And so that's the target on the 120 million. Right now we're setting that as the max to kind of get the process started and to do the applications and the pieces that we need to get rolling. And then we can make adjustments down from that number if we feel like we need to between then and now. But that is that's our target number. So
interest rates are still very competitive, and so it's better to. We've been talking about this for 3 years. We say, well, it's really good right now. It may not be in 6 months, and then 6 months later, it's still good. But we're in a really good time. So if we can utilize all the 120 million and at this current interest rate, that would be advisable.
Is that maxing us out for that?
It is.
That's how much we could sell without raising the rate.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct. And that's something we've talked a lot about. And just a reminder, we have additional 5 pennies on the INS. And the school finance system, everything's changed since the 2017 bond. We built the bond without needing a tax rate increase, but the school finance laws changed, and we've been able to maintain that throughout, is making that 45 cents a ceiling, even with the rules changing. But understanding also there's as we look into the future and look at projects, we also have to balance the tax rate in terms of interest. We also have to balance the construction cost and the acceleration of the construction cost. And as Mr. Welch has talked about, we're going to tell you now, we're a little bit nervous about when Eagle Mountain High School goes out, just because of the availability of some raw products and things, how backlogged they are. Hopefully it'll be better by that time, but those are things we're watching as well. There's even been districts that have shelved projects because of the construction cost. Yes. So we don't want to do that, but we're balancing all the different factors to determine, to make sure we do the very best thing financially, make sure we can get through our bond program. And right now we feel good. I don't feel great because I feel like 9%. We have conversations with Tarrant Appraisal District. That 9% sounds great. However, it shows a 26% decrease in comparison of the new construction costs last year for new residential. So we still have new residential, but we have 26% less than the previous year. Am I getting the numbers right?
Yes, sir. I think it's 16 on residential.
16, 26%
on commercial.
Thank you. Sorry,
yes,
I switched.
No problem.
No, thank you. I want to be accurate. And that seems bizarre considering how many new houses have been built. And we have reports from the city of Fort Worth showing the comparisons, showing that this past year in 2020 was one of the highest numbers of new homes in Fort Worth area, including our own, and including property assessed value. So it's really strange to us. So the question is when do those roll on? And so that's what we're trying to get at, is they were built then, but when do they roll onto the tax rate?
Well, we've got
Have we done
Bob Starts in Templeton's report.
Yes.
So I know they probably don't roll on until they're completed and ready to sell.
Right.
I mean, there is in progress.
And so that's the question, is that for us to know definitively for projection purposes, we know at some point they're going to roll on, but if they're finished in October, does it roll on? At what point does it roll on to?
The point is 1/1, that's the point of reckoning.
Mhm.
January 1, whatever's on the ground and up should be on the road.
Right.
I mean, there's no question about that.
Well, the question is for us is when do they state that the property is available? Are they holding out for 21 for some tax purposes? So we're trying to figure out why it seems low. When you see all these houses, why do we have a drop in 26% on commercial? I understand a little bit more because of what happened last year, but new homes, I mean, we're growing all over the district.
So a few years ago, we had an issue with some records not being in our file. Have we done a record audit to make sure? One of those files that they sent, you remember that? And so one of the files, and we had the same thing, it's going down, it doesn't look like it makes sense, and it turned out that there was a subset of data that was missing from
They're
the
missing
file.
a whole
Have we
bunch of
aud-
property.
Yes,
That's
have
what's
we
happening right now.
audited
This is
that?
still early because we're May, and this was addressed in June last time as we saw anomalies. And we really have to talk to them to try to find out why, explain to us why there's a 16% decrease in new construction prices. When at the same time, I believe there was a 12% increase it was 10% increase in existing residential. No, 12%.
12%.
12%, pardon me.
6% of that was, we identified was tied to the new construction coming on. Granted, it was a lesser amount than the prior year, but still about 6% of that growth in residential was the new construction. And then the other 6% was the revaluation. Obviously, after you net those two. So anyway, so 6% overall, I would expect, a higher number for what we're seeing in the market right now. But again, that's going back to January 1 versus right now.
They're going off fair market value, yeah, and houses, as he said, are selling at asking price plus. It's kind of hard to see how they wouldn't have gone up considerably more just based on that.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to be based on, is the fair market value. So it seems like it would be going up just because everything around your house is selling for more than yours is valued at, I'm sure.
So how does that work? Because I do know a lot of houses now are selling actually beyond an appraisal. And so, but we're tied to the appraisal, right, piece of it. So if those, we wouldn't get the benefit of that additional.
That's correct. Now, we know that there's also that lag of a cap of 10%. So some people properties have gone up 12 or 13%, but you're only taxed at the 10. And then the next year, there's a reckoning of that 3%, unless you go over it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. 9% is within the budget planning, so that's not the issue, but we were hoping for more because we're wanting to accelerate some projects, namely because we could save on construction costs and do it in a more interest-friendly time period. But we're not able to do that right now. And so that's what's frustrating. We really wanted to accelerate some things to be more prepared for the next market.
So it would have been 12 or 15%. We could have sold instead of 120 million, 200 million and gone ahead and accelerated some.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we feel a lot more comfortable if we're, well into the double digits.
Yes, not behind, but we wanted to be ahead.
Yes. And so, and again, we have to look at, as we make these projections, we're also having to think of, okay, it's 9% this year, will it be 9%, 10%, 11% next year? And, to make sure we maintain and have some capacity for the next issuance. So those are things that obviously we're trying to get as much information as we can on the timing of what we know is happening, but how is that going to reflect in our TAVs next year? So we have a lot of confidence in the decisions we make this year. So those are the pieces that we're still pulling that information together so that we can have that at the June meeting, if not before. So, outside of the TAVs and just where we are on the debt service, we have a few other budget considerations. We just talked about ESSER 3 and the ESSER 2 funding. the first allocation was 8.8 million of the ESSER 3. We're working through that process in the allocations right now. I'm sorry, the application process. It takes there are multiple steps tied to these funds as far as things that we have to go through from a process standpoint and gathering information and identifying how we're going to utilize them. The trick right now, and I think you alluded to it, Dr. Chadwell, was there's still even some legislation out there that's still lurking that would, as part of the school finance bill that has yet to be approved, and that would require us to actually take 40% of those ESSER 3 funds, and it would require us to supplant our existing funds with those, our existing expenditures, so that we can turn around and create a fund balance and then hold that fund balance until 2024, 2025. And so there's still some things out there that will impact how we budget for the year. And until we get past the session, even ESSER 3 has some speculation how we can utilize it.
So will this money go straight from the Fed, from the ESSER funds to the school? Does it all have to run through the state, and that's why they're getting their little hands on it?
It runs through the state, but there's on ESSER 3, there was a promise that dollars would go to the district, but we don't know what strings are going to be connected to it. ESSER 2 is the one that we're more concerned about strings.
But strings by the state or
by the state?
Yes.
By the state. We think the ESSER 3 funds are going to be less managed in that way.
Now, right now, it looks like we'll have some flexibility in how we spend those. We can potentially supplant existing funds. We can take care of some supplemental needs, but we also have, there's still the potential we may have additional requirements that haven't been given to us yet. But we're working on the application.
Real local control deal, I see there.
Yes.
And as we talk about the compensation plan here in a few moments, this is a factor in that. Any kind of additional, we have a stipend plan that we plan to bring in June right now to reorganize some stipends from elementary through high school. This provides the breathing room that we wanted to be able to continue to provide a GPI for staff and also address any kind of issues there with compensation. So this will assist us, but of course, we weren't planning to spend all of that in 1 year. We were going to phase it out. So I'm not that particularly worried that we have to put some things in a designated fund balance, because we were probably going to do that anyway. They're just going to take credit for telling us to do it. So.
So, yeah, like I said, we'll know more about that second piece, the 4.4 million. That will come later. State's having to jump through and take care of some things, file some things with the feds before they can release the additional third of the total 13.2 million that's designated for us. And then, like we mentioned, ESSER 3, that could be up to 6 million for us, but we just don't know what that's going to look like until there's even some talk that could roll into a special session item. And, so we don't know timing on that at all. Then just tying back to the legislature, session's coming to an end, a little over a week left. Haven't seen any significant changes since last month or since we last talked. And it's, as we've dealt with, even going back to House Bill 3, House Bill 3, which is a significant change to the school funding system, all happened within a couple of days. There were significant changes, even using current values.
Yeah, hold on, they got a week left.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
We're nervous about
it. Exactly. So, we're still working on pushing things forward on planning on the budget, but a lot's going to happen after this week. So we'll share as much as we can.
We'll know when the smoke clears a week from tonight, really.
Yeah. And Mr. Newcomb and I were talking about earlier about the possibility of a budget workshop, but I believe we determined if possible, we'd like to just wrap that into the June meeting and just designate additional time in the reports section and just spend a considerable amount of time there. If that's okay with y'all, we'll just.
Does y'all want to come in for another meeting?
Okay. And that'll still, talking with Mr. Welch, that'll still give us plenty of time in the planning purposes, we may have to, can't think of any action items that we would need. We may want to consider if we want to do that with the stipend plan. I mean, so those will be things I'll be talking with you all about.
Okay.
But most likely we'll be fine based on that schedule. We can bring that to you in June.
We already spent 35 minutes on tonight.
Pretty good. We can count this. We count this as a workshop, a mini workshop.
We're into a mini workshop.
All right.
Thank you, Rob.
Appreciate it.
Report D is the Human Resources Report. Dr. Dawkins, hold on just a second. And it's a 21-22 compensation plan report, page 53.
President Newcomb, members of the board, and Dr. Chadwell, thank you for allowing me the time tonight. This is our annual district compensation study, and so during this time, we, as you can see, we objectively examined pay equity for employees to determine if pay practices were internally fair and externally competitive, which has been a focus of the board for the last several years, and we're very excited about that. So we have looked at an assessment, as you can see, of current employee pay with those of our comparison districts, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, of who we compare ourselves to. We identify and address any existing pay equities, and then really are positioning the district competitively in order to recruit and retain highly qualified employees, because the competition is great out there. And also, I'll bring a couple of proposals to you tonight, or options to consider for salary increases, and really appreciate Rob teeing that up for me with the money. So for our discussion tonight, we'll focus on salaries on the teacher matrix as compared to our market that we look at. So we look at the following districts, you can see. So these are districts in Region 11 over 10,000, and these we consider many of our closest neighbors that we compete with for employees and for districts. And specifically, you can see our really close neighbors, Denton, Brightman, Colleyville, HEB, Keller. And so as we go along, I do want to point out the salaries of those districts. So these are who we use for our data we're looking at. I do want to commend the board. If you look at, this is over the last 11 years. So let me scroll up. Whoops, got a little freeze there. Just a second. Here we go. So 2009, you can see that we're almost at $10,000 in, it's just been a steady increase. We had 1 year in 2012-13, but we've recovered from that. And so $10,000 for starting teacher pay is very exciting over the last 11 years. The next part of the report that you'll see shows where we rank with the districts that we used in our comparison, so the ones over 10,000. So these bars are where that comparison is. You also see in that UEA publishes the salary comparison report. Now they have additional districts in there, so these are ours from Region 11, again, over 10,000 students. So this shows where we are at year 0, 5, 10, and let me scroll. Excuse me. 15, 20, 25, and 30 of where we rank. What's exciting about the next chart that we have shows where we were in that comparison chart, but it shows us moving up as where we were ranked, for instance, let's say in 14, 15 to where we are now. And so we're continually moving up. If you go back to the other, there are, sometimes there's really like $20 difference between us and a neighboring district. I mean, it's really, some of them are not that significant. It does look like, okay, well, we're 5th or 6th, but within just a few dollars of that. So that's very exciting. So what I do have tonight for you would be the teacher salary matrix with a 1% increase and then a 2% increase for consideration. So it would just show you, especially if you would to take a look at your 0, the 5, 10, 15, 20 that we use in our comparison scale. We really are looking at maintaining our competitiveness. We feel like our neighbors, and talking with Rob, we feel like many of our neighbors are going to land at, possibly closer to 2% on a GPI. That's not definitive, but that's kind of what we are hearing. So I did present 1% on the teacher matrix, and this would also apply to all employees. I just wanted to show you what the data that would be out there for us to see with our neighbors on the teacher matrix. And so this would be applying a 2% to that. So you can see that that makes a significant difference, a 2%, especially for a starting year teacher at 57.2.
And what's the projected cost of the per percent?
About,
Total.
well, for all employees, it's about 1.5 million. For all
1.5 per percent?
Yes.
Per percent, 1.5 per percent for all employees.
And Rob is currently building a budget, obviously yet to be approved, but with the 2% compensation in there. And again, as I shared with y'all, we plan on bringing a stipend report to y'all in June for review and possibly approval in July. And then also continuing the equity adjustment budget that allows us to go in and do market studies of positions to stay competitive in that area. So between those three things, we feel like we'll continue to be strong in the market and continue what we're doing.
So what puts us not there in your, just what happens in the legislature? Is that our only real big risk here?
I feel like based on everything I'm seeing at the legislative level, there is very little chance that we couldn't get there.
Okay.
I feel very strong because they're not really getting into the fundamental, they're getting into the periphery. If they mess with ESSER 2, ESSER 3 still is a significant amount of money to be able to budget. So I feel good about that. And really what ESSER 3 is giving us is a breathing room. It's giving us the what ifs in terms of enrollment in the fall. We're not spending all of that necessarily or counting on all of that for this purpose. So we feel good about it. And we feel like if we went above that, it would start stretching us pretty well because of course this continues every year. Once you make the commitment, you're making the commitment in the future. So based on everybody, and there could be somebody out there that's looking at a 3. I've not talked to anybody that's looking at a 3%. It's 1 to 2 right now. So.
Any questions?
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Our next report is the Education Services Report about a virtual academy presentation. Dr. Parker.
Good evening. I am on page 69. I'll start there. As you remember last week, actually, it was last month, wasn't it? I presented on the possibility of an EMS ISD virtual academy. What I'd like to do tonight is give you information update on current legislature going through that I presented last month, as well as make a recommendation to you regarding that possibility. So let's jump right into it. Like I said, I want to talk about current legislation, talk about local considerations, and then provide a recommendation. First of all, let's start with current legislation going through. Senate Bill 348 is where the parent has access to the virtual setting and the curriculum and all of that information. Right now, that is in a crossover stage, which meant it has gone from the Senate to the House, and it's sitting in that area. Senate Bill 27 had lots of information in it. However, in regards to that, there's no current action at all. So we could say it's dead, but
Don't say that.
Right now it's just no current action happening there. House Bill 1468 is one that received some traction over the weekend. Actually, it is in the crossover stage, and with that, just as I presented last month, there's lots of things happening here. And it actually, today it was in the crossover stage. It is now in the Senate committee has looked at that, and that will go to a vote. This one's very likely to move forward. And even though it's moving forward, there's a lot of things that cause us pause, including those unknowns at the bottom. What's the funding going to look like? Right now, it looks like it's going to stay with the district, but there's a lot of Commissioner of Education gains a lot of authority in this bill to determine the attendance, the funding, how the accountability process. Looks like With a virtual academy under House Bill 1468, it would have to stand on its own, having its own PIMS number, thus accountability rating as well.
Was it also where you could only recruit schools from your own district? Did I misread that?
Well, now it's both. You can have your own up to 10%, or a district could be open, so they could gather others. Then they would charge us. We would receive the funding.
It's only if there's an agreement. Right now, the attendance, my understanding, unless something's changed since yesterday, that the attendance boundary is fixed for a school district, that you could only have your kids go into a virtual. Now, you could have an agreement with another school district, and that's where there's that.
That's it. You could have an agreement. You would still get the funding, but they would charge you to go there.
You have some agreement.
Just to be specific, how would that affect Denton's trying to make a virtual academy for the whole Metroplex?
They would not be able to do that in that case. Now, who could are charter schools that do not have attendance boundaries, but it also has a rule that only 10% of your student population can be comprised of virtual students. So for that charter school, it would be limited to 10, plus any district just trying to serve their own kids would be limited to 10%.
Right.
So those two caveats are in there. Now, they could be talking about it right now, and it could be changing. There's a lot of discussions, but it looks like it's starting to be more firmed up in terms of what they're all agreeing.
It gives a lot of power to the Commissioner of Education regarding what, like I said, 3 key areas: the attendance, the accountability piece, and where they can go to the almost total to the Commissioner of Education. So with that, again, that's in the crossover stage. Today, it did get voted out of committee and will go into voting.
Is there any timeline associated with that when the commissioner would have to let school districts know what?
By May 31st.
No,
I mean,
that's the legislation, but then when you would know if this were to go into effect.
We're going to talk about that because that's one of the key pieces that we don't know.
That's what you'll learn at the legislative update this summer leadership.
Yeah, or he announces to the public. Local consideration. So with this is the current remote overall district percentage. We have we're staying in that 22% range. Okay, and with that, it's gone down tremendously since the beginning of the school year, but we're staying right about there. We have current survey that just came out of K-12. We have just 960. I asked her to, Megan Overman supplied this to me today. We have about 961 respondents in our current survey, and it's very similar to what we had earlier in the spring, with 83% of those responding saying, no, we're going to stay in person. We have a 6% who say, 6% would mean 56 students out of the 50-something parents responded as saying, yes, they would consider remote. We have 2%, which is equal to the earlier data, that are not going to be in our district next year. So they're probably going to move, and they know that, or something similar to that. And then we have 8% who really just don't know what they're going to do. But still the majority by far want to go back to in person. When we look at that also, when we talk about leadership observations and what we're seeing with the current data coming out with state accountability, our remote learners are not doing as well as our in-person learners, and we're really struggling. We've brought a lot of students back from the remote setting because of their lack of success there, and just feel like but our leadership at the campus level is telling us the students do better. They do better emotionally, they do better physically, they do better academically. Currently, we only have 2 Region 11 districts that have advertised virtual academies. This would include Keller and Denton, of which we just spoke about. Talking with Keller, for sure, if this is not funded, they will not continue with that. There are multiple districts in Region 11 that are saying no to virtual school, including Mansfield. Mansfield just shared with us last week, and I asked if I could share this with you guys. They did a survey, then they looked at the amount of students who would actually qualify under the restrictions, like they would have had to have been successful this year in the remote learning. And Mansfield has about 35,000 students, and they would have about 89 who would qualify. So they are not moving forward with that. So it's interesting. Some are looking at hybrid models. Dallas is looking at a hybrid model. DeSoto is looking at a hybrid model as well, where they would do that part-time. With all of this, our recommendation is, the administration's recommendation is that we do not move forward with implementing a virtual academy. We have multiple reasons for this recommendation. Our belief and experience that in-person education is superior to remote learning for the vast majority of students. And I won't read every one of these, but just to summarize, we're in a lot of unknowns with the legislation. Just like, is it going to move forward? Is Abbott going to sign it once he gets it? When are we going to get the information? We would have to implement, be much in the mode of what we were in last summer. We've got to get this done, and we've got to get this done in a hurry. And that means we would not have a quality product for our students. The updates throughout the summer would require changes. Funding is not defined, and that's very scary because when we move into the rest of the reasons, this a virtual academy at the secondary only is going to cost, just in salaries alone, right at $2 million. That doesn't include the extra work put on our coordinators, our curriculum staff, and the additional resources that would be needed as we put together what that would be. So we don't want to rush to do this, and we feel like we would need very concrete direction from the state before we move further. So at this time, we are not recommending to move further with the possible virtual academy. Any questions?
No?
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. I think the board is in agreement with that recommendation.
I want to thank y'all for your patience and input as we looked at this. We've given an honest effort to be fair and to think about this and what's best for our kids. And the standard of excellence that we set, we do not feel like can be fulfilled with the program, and we want to do what's best for our kids. And we just really appreciate y'all, and again, helping us go through this. And it's been challenging, as y'all can imagine, but y'all have helped a lot just by allowing us to go through that, and also, again, providing the input that you have. Thank you.
We appreciate y'all giving that full measure, because we know it took a lot of your time for something that might or might not happen. And I think we're glad that we've reached a conclusion, and that we can now devote our time to more things that are going to happen for next school year. So we appreciate that. That concludes the reports, which is item 8. We moved to item 9, which is action items. And the first action item is to elect board officers.
I make a motion to recommend Steve Newcomb as president, Paige Ring as vice president, and Liz Hatley as secretary.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Marilyn, to elect the officers for the 2021-22 school year. Any questions on that? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Next is bids and proposals. Rob Welch, we have the extension of proposal for assessment and adaptive curriculum for reading and math. That was a long bid.
I make a motion on this. Do I have to read every one of those line items?
Good question, or you could let Rob make the recommendation and then just say as presented.
So I could read that, or we can simply say,
as in the report?
Yes, as presented.
I make a recommendation to extend the agreement for assessment and adaptive curriculum for reading and math until August 31st, 2022, with the following companies that are listed in the report. With the estimated annual expenditure is $870,000. Actual annual total will depend upon district needs and product usage. Estimated expenditure projections for 2021 and 2022 are as follows, and they are also listed in the report.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz. Any questions on the motion or questions about the way it's stated? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Next is the extension of proposal for classroom magazines. Page 119, it goes way back there.
I
recommend we extend the agreement with Scholastic Inc. for classroom magazines until August 31st, 2021. The total annual expenditure is $153,713. Actual annual total will depend on district needs and product usage.
Second.
Motion by Paige, second by Liz. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none, motion carries 6-0.
Is there a typo in that motion? The current one expires, should that have been 2022? That recommended motion?
Yes.
Did you read?
I read it how it was.
Oh, you
I
read it how
read
it was.
2021, that's what's printed here, but I think it needed to actually say 2022.
Two.
So can I amend my?
Good question.
No, I think I have to
I think you have to do it again.
Okay, and so I am going to make a new motion to extend the agreement with Scholastic Inc. for classroom magazines until August 31st, 2022. The total annual expenditure will be $153,713. Actual annual total will depend upon district needs and product usage.
Second.
Motion by Paige, second by Liz. The only change is that the date is changed from August 31st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 6-0. Thanks for catching that, Paige. Next to is extension of proposal for cabling infrastructure and the job order contract.
I make a motion to extend the agreement with Superior Fiber and Data Services for cabling infrastructure job order contract for the second option year, June 1, 2021 through May 31, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Marilyn. Questions on the cabling contract? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Billy, hold on just a second, Mr. Kidd. Are you gonna, yeah, just want to make sure we keep the same protocol.
Thanks,
Next
Josh.
is to award the job order contract for multiple construction projects at various campuses. Welcome, Billy.
I make a motion to award Goldsmith Construction a job order contract for multiple construction projects at various campuses at the cost of $401,715.96.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Marilyn. Mr. Kidd has waited here all this time to make anything. Any comments you care to make? Or are you just glad that
I'm
the
just here to
motion?
answer questions.
Any questions? Okay, any questions anybody has?
Can I make a comment?
Sure, please.
Just to bring attention to the packet, I know that not everybody can see that at Elkins Elementary School. Actually, if you could just really quickly go through the things that are going to be done, because this just shows the work that's going to be done throughout the district as a part of our improvement plan.
Absolutely. So at Elkins Elementary, we'll be adding a hard ceiling to the gym. We'll be removing acoustical spray off of the gym walls and repainting. We'll be adding an ADA ramp out of the east corridor to the south exit that will access the playground. We will be adding a new fencing structure for the well system that is outside the cafeteria. We'll be adding sidewalk frontage along Elkins School Road. At Eagle Mountain Elementary School, we'll be replacing doors in the second grade wing, classroom doors in the second grade wing. We'll also be adding a new fencing structure around their well system as well. At Boswell High School, we'll be adding a sidewalk to access students to the property from the east development that's right there adjacent to the campus. They will also be able to access from the northwest additions at that intersection of Bowman Roberts and Bailey Boswell, and then also down Bowman Roberts on the south end of the district, coming back to the north to access the property, all on a paved pathway.
You're going to put sidewalks in there right along the road. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the sidewalks will be actually on our property out of the
okay.
easement, yes.
All right.
We also have trying to remember, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't.
You did good. You got Gillen, you got a dumpster.
Gilliland, we've got a dumpster screening at Gilliland Elementary School that will protect those dumpsters from the view of the public, as well as sort of secure them from, I guess, the community utilizing them improperly. So, excuse me.
At Creekview?
At Creekview Elementary School, we'll be also adding some fencing to that property that will actually secure that football field and that site, so we don't have any potential issues with people accessing that via vehicles.
I think that's Ed Wilkie. It's Ed Wilkie.
That's right, it's
okay.
Ed Wilkie, my apologies.
That's
At
right.
Creekview, we have sidewalks over there that will be supporting this new housing addition on the north side of the campus for those kids to access the property. There's already a pedestrian fence over on that side, but we'll be running a sidewalk from there that will access the property that's over there close to the gym entrance. And then it'll also be doing a masonry route around the column, around their marquee at the front of the road, as well as painting it.
I'd like to add, I appreciate everything that y'all do and all of our maintenance people, because it's stuff like this that keeps our schools looking like we want them to look. You know, we want to be proud of them. We want our kids to be proud, and the parents, you know, whether it's brand new or been there for 20 or 30 years. I think the aesthetics of it makes for a good learning environment for the kids, and it keeps people with having pride in all of our schools. And I think doing things like this every year is what sets us apart from a lot of other school districts. And I appreciate that. I know everybody up here on the board does.
And the only other thing I'll add is that, you know, there's several of these components that are more impactful to the function of the campus than others. And so we'll be proceeding with those first, and then get to the less impactful ones later. The objective is to get everything through before August the 15th. Obviously, with sidewalks, depending on weather, that may or may not happen as quickly as we'd like, but that is the goal, to especially take care of everything as the way the campus functions and flows, so that there's no interruptions when August 15th rolls around.
I'm thinking of our bond planning committee, and as they were building that list, and I appreciate what Mr. Daughtry said, because there were several of these they've been waiting for them, and obviously you can't have a bond pass in 17 and all of a sudden do it all in 18. It takes time, but I know the Elkins gym ceiling is a great example of that. People have been, they're going to be really, really pleased to see that done. And so, again,
That's in the Barbara Christensen gym?
Yes, correct. And that's one of those projects, plus the paint and that. And anyway, all the ones that you listed, I think it's going to make a significant impact on this campus.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to that being able to be done.
Cleet, you have something to add? I can tell before we vote.
This is just using the job order procurement method. There are other projects that we're adding to him and Hunter this summer that the job already as a board approved. So this is just for the job order. But
Are you just saying we thought this was all he's going to be doing?
I just wanted to know he's doing a lot more than that.
I know, okay. We understand, but thank you for making sure we knew that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your support.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. Mr. Daughtry, I just didn't want to rush through that just since he was here, and I'm glad you explained that. I appreciate you going over all that. We do have a motion on the floor by Tim and seconded by Marilyn. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Now you're done, Billy. Thank you. Next action item is to consider action on modification to COVID-19 protocols. Holly Smith.
I have a presentation, but I don't know if it's showing up.
Thank you for bearing with us here.
Oh, no problem. Can y'all see the presentation? Okay, there we go.
Okay.
President Newcomb, members of the board, and Dr. Chadwell. Tonight, I'm presenting a recommendation regarding the EMS ISD COVID-19 protocols.
All right, Ollie, get as close to that mic as you can, just or have him turn it up for you.
I would like to begin by giving you an overview of where we are now. This is information from Tarrant County Public Health Department. We are at a moderate community spread level, and cases have been declining since January. This slide shows additional key data points. All data points are the lowest they have been in over a year. EMS ISD has seen a decrease in COVID cases since January. From May 1st to May 19th, we saw 5 staff cases and 14 student cases. COVID-19 vaccines are now widely available to those who want one. In March, EMS ISD partnered with Texas Health Fort Worth to offer vaccine to employees, and 674 employees took advantage of the opportunity. On May 18th, Perone Pharmacy hosted a vaccine clinic for staff and students ages 12 and up. 321 individuals were vaccinated that night. Local pharmacies also have vaccines available. Saginaw Recreation Center has been doing vaccines, but since making this PowerPoint, I have learned that the vaccine site is now closed. Texas Education Agency issued public health guidance for school year 2020-2021. Tarrant County Public Health issued guidance for schools on August 7th and has provided no further updates. Both agencies have let us know that we should not expect further guidance until later this summer. These protocols were implemented when we were seeing an increase in cases. We were not able to protect ourselves. Testing is now readily available and easily accessible. Masks are plentiful and individuals have been educated on what symptoms to look for. Vaccines are available to those 12 and up without long lines or cumbersome registration processes. It is incumbent upon us to review our current protocols and data and consider changes to our protocols now rather than later. On Tuesday, May 18th, Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued Executive Order GA36, prohibiting governmental entities from requiring any person to wear a face covering. The order further states that public schools may continue to follow policies regarding the wearing of face coverings to the extent reflected in current guidance by the Texas Education Agency through June 4th. EMS ISD administration has continued to closely monitor the COVID impact in our schools and community. The number of positive cases has declined sharply in our community, while the availability of vaccines has increased. As a result, prior to the executive order issued on Tuesday, the administration planned to recommend to the board to review, deliberate, and consider action on modifications to the EMS ISD COVID-19 protocols. Based on local COVID-19 data and in alignment with Executive Order GA36, it is recommended that as of June 1st, masks no longer be required on EMS ISD campuses, but remain an option for those that would like to use them. In addition, the requirement for identified close contacts to quarantine would become optional. A positive individual would still be required to quarantine. Close contacts would still be identified, and parents would be notified that their student was identified as a close contact. Parents would then have the option to quarantine their student as long as they remain symptom-free. Case numbers would still closely be monitored. So, just to review, the recommendation is to modify current EMS ISD COVID-19 mitigation protocols as of June 1st, no longer requiring individuals to wear masks and making quarantine requirements for close contacts optional.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Marilyn. So,
Can I?
oh yeah, we're all going to get to a shot. Who wants to go first?
Well, mine's just a clarifying question.
Yeah,
because
okay.
the way so the quarantine requirements for close contacts optional is effective immediately, not on June 1st, correct?
As of June 1st.
Or not till June 1st, the quarantine requirements.
Right.
I thought we quickly.
I think you could read that either way.
Yeah.
No,
So,
we still are quarantining.
Just the person that's infected.
Well, what the deal was that the mask itself was a mitigating factor. So as long as they wore a mask, then they didn't have to quarantine. But with the mask guidelines going away, this information, this second piece of this was absent in the governor's guidance. And so we felt like we need to expressly state that we would not be requiring quarantines, or it may appear that once the mask goes away, then simply everybody would have to quarantine as they do now if they're not wearing a mask. So we wanted to clarify that with masks not existing, they can't be a mitigating factor, but there would not be a requirement to quarantine except for those that are positive.
Okay, so, all right.
Yeah, so the mask really addressed it. Our quarantine numbers have obviously plummeted, but part of that wasn't because we had people around somebody that had COVID, but since they had a mask, it was mitigating and they weren't required to quarantine.
In the past, they would have been.
Yes, when y'all made, when
we
y'all
changed.
passed made the change in March, then we enacted that change.
Moving forward after, that was June 1, even if someone tests positive and people do not have a mask on, they are not required to quarantine. That's their choice.
Correct, as long as they're symptom-free, and if they had symptoms, it wouldn't matter what they had. They can't come to school with a fever or sick. And then if they do have COVID, they would have to quarantine just as anybody would that had the flu or any kind of illness that requires them to stay out of the public. So we wanted to clarify that. Some are not talking about that second part of it. We felt like that was important because otherwise people, it may imply, okay, you don't have to wear a mask, but now we're going to have quarantine numbers that skyrocket because they're within the 6 feet parameter.
Anybody else before I have my shot at this? Well, you know, the governor and our legislator talks about local control. And they gave us this local control about the mask. They were too chicken to say what we should do. They said, no, local school boards, you should decide. They put all that on us, went through all that hell the first of school year and during school year. And now the governor wants to ride in on his white horse and take all credit of being a hero and say, I'm going to remove the mask requirements. So I think it's just baloney. I think it's bull. It upsets me a lot that he would come in and do that and then pick a random date of June the 4th. So I do want to go public. We were already planning this, you know, this was already planned, as you pointed out, but prior to the governor come in with his baloney hero, you know, riding on the white horse, I'm going to save all the mask people. So I think that us taking this action is what we should do and what we would have done no matter what the governor said. But I do want to point out that he wanted us to have local control. But when it came time to make the hard decision, he said, oh no, let the local school boards require. And now he's telling me that if I enforce the mask mandate after June 4th, he's going to fine me. He's going to fine Dr. Chappell. He's going to fine Tim Doctor. He's going to fine Holly Smith, the nurse, if we try to enforce the mask deal. And that's just baloney. So I wanted to say that out in public and let the people know that that is just not right. The governor treated us all badly here on the local school boards, that we had to deal with this, and I just don't think it's right. So that's what I have to say about it.
I agree.
I think everyone agrees.
Well, good. So I just wanted to say that. Any other comments about that? All right.
Well stated, Dr.
Thank you. Y'all have, if not, then you've heard the recommendation of our administration to remove the mask going forward from June 1st forward and the associated quarantine requirements. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. The motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Holly, for standing there while I ran and got on my soapbox. But we appreciate your work and all you've done in this time. Yeah.
And just wanted to let the board know also that even before COVID, we even heard of COVID, there have been people with compromised immune systems and other types of medical conditions that stop them from being in public, that affect them from being in public. And we've needed to work with those individual students, and we will continue to do that. There are services such as homebound services and other kind of programs, and some of these students are served through special services, some are not. But we will continue to do that work independently with each of those kids, just so for people to know that we know there are special circumstances with individual children that we'll continue to work with them, just as we did before COVID. So I don't know if there's any questions on that, but okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you. We appreciate your work you've done. That is the last of the action items. That brings us into routine monthly reports. Are there any questions on that? Hearing none, Dr. Chappell will review the 2021 board planning calendar.
Yes, sir. This is on page 240 of your packet. You'll notice that in the June meeting, we'll continue to talk about budget analysis, discussion of salary scenarios, and any kind of new positions. You'll notice we didn't have any new positions in this one. We have some that we're working on right now that may come to you in June for review. We also have the EMSISD Athletic Department annual report, the InterQuest Canine Detection contract. Obviously, we didn't have to do that this year. We'll consider that for next year. We also have the under Educational Services and Aspire 2025 update, the District of Innovation renewal 22 through 27. Dr. Barnes is working on that, and we'll have that report. And we also have discussion of the EMSISD curriculum management plan, pardon me. And we did not have any recommendations for a TASB advocacy agenda resolution proposals, and so that item will be struck from the agenda. Then we also have a conduct of federal programs public meeting, and I believe the rest is in the packet. You can see that. If there's any questions or any items y'all want me to include, just please let me know.
And the budget report will just be longer,
Yes, sir.
same schedule that you've got there.
Yes, sir.
All
We'll
right.
have, I believe we'll just start at 5 as normal, and we'll just devote the whole 5 to 6 period for a budget workshop. If it takes less than that, then we'll continue with some other reports there.
All right. That brings us to the consent agenda for approval. The chair will entertain a motion.
Move
to-
we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Paige. Marilyn, would you second that?
Liz.
Liz, thank you, sorry. Motion by Paige, second by Liz. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none, motion carries 6-0. Board President's announcements. I know we're headed into the final week of school, and graduations are coming up. I'm sure you're going to go over some of that also. We have Watson on Friday and then 3 graduations on Saturday at Dickey's Arena. So we're looking forward to, that's always a fun time for us to see and y'all to see and the teachers to see the culmination of their hard work at graduation. So we're looking forward to that and to being with y'all all day Saturday.
Ready for me?
Yes, sir.
All right. And as Mr. Newcomb said, obviously we have graduations coming up. A slight change on the Watson High School graduation is they did send information that they're going to have some box sandwiches that night. If you'd like to come a little bit early and grab a bite to eat, they're providing that. And that, again, is at the Jared Hardy Performing Arts Center. We also are expecting some large numbers, and we're going to have that also live fed into the cafeteria area for those that overflow. And so, again, that's going to be a great evening.
Are there any, no social distancing, so we're going to fill up the whole auditorium?
Correct.
How many graduates do they have this year?
They have
How many?
195, okay.
Did we get the story? We get a little story this year, a couple of years ago? They kind of give a little biography from,
Yeah, they do it, their graduation is a little different. They do
Yes,
recognize each.
they changed it up a little bit. With that number, I'm not sure if it's going to be quite as lengthy, but they will. And of course, those students are also eligible to graduate in the traditional high school, Saginaw, Chisholm, and Boswell. And this will be the first time, obviously, we're at Dickey's. I'm really excited about that. I'm very excited, as y'all know, I have a child graduating that day, so I'm glad that's the last one, because I may be a little bit emotional after that one, so that's going to be a good day, and we're very excited. I did want to, again, let y'all know that we did inquire about the mask requirements. That is a Dickey's rule. If they change that rule before the 29th, then we would adhere to that rule, but at this point, they are adhering to a mask rule. We will allow our students to have their photos taken across the stage without masks. Speakers at the podium will not have a mask, but for those people in the audience and the students there. So there's a mask requirement from Dickey's. And that could change in this week. I mean, we know things are moving very quickly, but at this point, and Mr. Behringer talked to them on Thursday, I believe, and they said they were keeping with
And
that.
regardless of what we did with our date on the mask requirements, it would have made no difference because we're following Dickey's rules.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Yes, it wouldn't have mattered what our rules are. They're a private business, so although they do have some public funding, I find interesting how that all works, but at this point, they do still have those rules. We also run into the summer 2021 hours of operation starting on June 1st, and also for those of you that are participating in TASB SLI, that is virtual. We did request an in-person option on that, was unavailable. And then on June 26th, just want to pay special attention to that. We have a post-legislative conference as well, which should be interesting. And there'll probably be some others. I'll send those to you that may be a non-TASB ledge update. It may not count for hours, but things that I think would be of interest, I'll make sure I'll pass that on to you. Last thing I want to say is, obviously, this is not the end of the year, but it's getting real close, so it's probably the most appropriate time to say it, that I just want to thank y'all for, and everybody in this room, for all their work. This has been one crazy 13 months, and just what Mr. Newcomb said in the summer, of shifting rules, things that just changing and churning, and then trying to turn that around for our community, and everybody doing their very best in a really challenging situation. I'm very, very proud, first of our students that have done so much. Some have been quarantined multiple times. I had both my kids were quarantined, one, I think 2 or 3 times, and it's hard. It's very hard, and I know that some people, and if you don't mind me saying, Ms. Ring, same thing. I mean, it's hard being, having a child have to move in and out, but we've all managed because we wanted to keep people safe. And I'm so thankful that we're at the point now where we're able to stand down these requirements. So getting back to a normalcy is really looking forward to that. Summer program is on. We're going to have summer camps. We're going to have things happening. We have obviously our summer school. And the last thing, I said students, so I need to say our staff. Our staff have been incredible. I was sitting here earlier, we're talking, I was thinking of a staff member. I'm going to send this person an email tomorrow because I know how hard this year has been on this individual and how well that they've done. And obviously the people in this room that have led the district. So thank you to all of you. And then also, just to end with this, summer school. There's probably not a time that we've needed summer school more as we see students and the deficits they've had in learning and how difficult it's been academically. They need, there's a lot of work to be done. So I hope kids participate in that. If not, we're going to hit the ground running in August and meeting those kids' needs and getting them up to speed. But also, as y'all keep them in your thoughts, also just the social part of it, the emotional part of it, kids that have not been amongst friends. And I've heard story after story of kids coming back. Imagine being a kindergartner and starting in March or April, and all of a sudden, here's all these kids you saw on the other side of the TV, and it's like, I don't want to go back home now, this is great. I mean, we are designed as people to be in social environments. We're supposed to be around people. And that's how school works. And I'm really looking forward to that happening again. And not with a mask in front of us, not with saying, let me get a tape measure out, 6 feet. And we did all that to keep each other safe and protect each other, but I'm really looking forward to that. And so thank y'all for your patience and really the community's patience on as we've gone through such difficult things. But I'll say we're going to be better for it simply because we've learned that if we can do this, we can do I don't want to do anything harder than this, but I know we probably could if we can pull this last year off. So thanks to all of you.
You bet. I think there's no further business to come before this board. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Donna's not here, so somebody's going to have to do it. Whoever's next in seniority. Paige, it must be you.
I did it already.
All right. Who seconded? Marilyn. All right. Motion by Paige, second by Marilyn. All in favor? We're adjourned.